Hello, I'm Icarus Moth, an instructor here at 343 Labs. I'm here with another tutorial for you. Today we're going to be focusing on a couple of cool reverb tricks. I think we all know how reverb works, but there are a few things that we can use that tool for to really spice up our track and add a little bit of life to it. So I've got a piece of music here we can take a listen to real quick, and you can tell it's not bad, but it's missing some things, right? So we're going to try and use reverb to spice this one up a little bit. Nice, so we've got a little beat with some piano and a bass and some nice soft drums, but it doesn't have a lot of movement to it, right? We have this part and it just kind of repeats a few times. So let's think about some ways that we can add reverb to this to make it more interesting. The first one I want to mention is transition effects, right? We all have sample packs. I'm sure we're all familiar with browsing through the impacts and the sweeps and the swooshes. And sometimes when you throw one of those into your track, it just doesn't feel right. It feels like it's part of an entirely different song from the one that you've been working on. And so if we make them ourselves with stuff from our track, it kind of guarantees that it's going to work out for us. So the way that I'm going to do this, and you have a couple of alternatives for how we approach this, but this is the way I like to do it. We're going to add an audio track in Ableton, and with this audio track, we're going to capture sound from one of our other tracks in Ableton. So the way that we do that is by accessing this drop-down menu over here and selecting the track that we want to record from. So in this instance, it's going to be my drum kit. And then over here off to the side, I'm going to make some MIDI notes with individual hits from my drum kit. And you'll understand why momentarily. So let's add maybe a snare here, and I want to leave some space in between these because we're going to be adding reverb to them. Remember, this is about reverb today. So I'll add a nice hi-hat here as well. Maybe get our kick drum in there. And 3 is probably enough for what we're doing because we can always manipulate what we make here later on anyway. So now I want to drench these sounds in reverb, and I'm going to stick to the Ableton stuff, but definitely use whatever reverb you like. And we're going for a big reverb here, right? So our dry wet's going to be all the way up, if not, pretty far past 50%. If you go, around 50% or so, at the very end, when we reverse this later, you get a really dry sound that kind of swoops in, which could be cool, but for what I want, I think we're gonna go all the way up with the dry wet. I'm gonna turn off our EQ cuts on the reverb because I kind of want a full frequency sound here. We can always trim it up with an EQ later. So I'm also going to get rid of the dampening effects here. And we're going to do a pretty big size and a pretty long decay time. Remember, longer is a little bit better than shorter because we can shorten this sample later. We're recording this into audio, so we will have control over that. Density up, scale down, why not? And then we have in the Ableton reverb some audio boosts, so we can just make this reverb louder, more present ahead of time. And now if I play these back, you can hear we have these big impact sounds, probably fairly reminiscent to what you would hear in some of these sample packs. So the reason we space these out is because our reverb tail is about 9 seconds now, right? Which means these are going to overlap each other. So I do want to give them enough space so that we can use them in their entirety. And now we could absolutely just export this soloed into our desktop and then bring this back in, but it's nice to know some of the different ways that we can resample in Ableton. And so now that I've selected the drum kit as our audio input on this audio track, I can arm it for recording and play through some of these tracks. If you're trying to get around the count-in click, you can just start playing ahead of time and then turn recording on. Won't make us go through that count of 4 because I have my count-in selected up here. All right, and then the last one. So you can see these are pretty quiet samples that we've gotten here because, we have quiet drum kit and reverb at a full dry wet is never really going to be super loud. So we might need to boost these a little bit later. But look, we have a bunch of nice impact sounds that we can now use, like Ableton warping, changing the pitch, changing the length with fades, and reversing to implement these into our track in a few different places. So let's add these and let's play back through this and see what our result is. So I think we'll put the kick drum at the front. Oh, we still have the reverb on the drum kit. Don't forget to nix that once you're finished. And so we have this nice impact at the beginning. I think we can make this fairly loud. This is our hi-hat one. So let's actually try and reverse this. So I'm going to shorten it a bit, right? And we're going to create a bit of a fade here. so that the audio doesn't cut at the end. And then I'm gonna use Control or Command J on that piece of audio to consolidate it into its own thing. So that fade is now incorporated, and it's also shortened, so we can't make this any longer anymore. And I'm going to move it over here and reverse it. I kind of like adding pauses, right? So instead of having this reverse directly into the beat, having it maybe reverse into the last beat of the measure before. You'll kind of hear what that does. Then we have this other one too. Maybe we put that on the downbeat here. I think this is our snare. It's pretty big, so maybe we turn this down a bit and add a fade so that it doesn't stick around for as long as it does. Cool. And then as we have this, we can maybe just add some of these throughout the rest of the song. So maybe something like that. Actually, let's put this there. Lovely. All right, so let's play through this and hear how just some of these simple transition effects help this song kind of have some movement. But more primarily, I want you to listen to how these sounds kind of blend nicely with our drums and our instruments, because it's where they came from originally. I've gone and swapped my impacts a little bit. This is the snare and this is the kick. So I'm gonna reverse these. But are those the same? No, it's okay. Otherwise, this is sounding pretty good, right? So there's some other things that we can do with reverb too to definitely add a lot more flavor to some of the other elements in this track that are going on. Now that we have some impact sounds that we like, let's take a look at this piano melody. So on its own, it's just kind of somebody playing piano. It's very dry. So we're going to use a cool trick called preverb or reverse reverb to give this a very unique space that it's in, something that's pretty unrealistic as far as like the real world is concerned. And we need to also create audio version of this piano to make this work. So for this one, I'm actually just going to freeze and flatten this. I like the melody. I'm going to commit to it. I don't really want to make any changes to this piano sound. So to save some time, we can just pull the audio out of it in this manner. And right away, what we're going to want to do is reverse this sound. And this will make sense later, but we need this reversed when we apply the reverb to it for this to work. So we'll go ahead and add our reverb tool. And now what type of reverb we add to this is definitely dependent on your song and the sound you're applying this trick to. If you're adding this to something like a voice, we probably want to have a bit of a shorter reverb. Otherwise it's going to overlap, you know, the words that the singer is singing or speaking. And it's going to be kind of maybe noisy and it won't quite give you the effect that we're looking for. With instruments and pads, you maybe have a little bit more room with that decay. But you know, you can mess around with some different options and decide for yourself what you like, right? For this one, since the notes are pretty close together, I'll do a shorter reverb, probably something around a second or so. And a shorter size for sure. I'll switch my quality to high. I don't know why that's not defaulted. And for this one, we don't really want to have, you know, a dry wet of 100%. If I was blending in this effect with a dry piano layer, then I would go this route, but I froze and flattened my piano. So we're going to just let this stay kind of blended in, maybe around 30 to 40. You'll really hear it still. Here without reverb, it's very dry. And then with reverb. You know, I'll keep a version of this that's dry just so we can remind ourselves what this was like before. So now that I have this reversed piano with the reverb applied to it, we're going to create another piece of audio with this flattened in, right? So we're going to freeze the track and flatten it once again. That's going to collapse our reverb into this original recording. And now we're going to re-reverse our sound, right? So be careful about this little tail here. We're just going to click the reverse button. And now what you'll hear is this reverb kind of swells into each piano note, and it gives it a very sort of like ghostly effect. So again, kind of unrealistic in nature, but it sounds very cool in context, because remember the dry version. We'll skip back and forth. Right? So let's apply this to the rest of the song and see how these reverb changes added to the piece of music. So there you go, a couple of reverb tricks that hopefully you can find some cool uses for in your own music. That was some quick reverb tricks. I've been Icarus Moth. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel if you want to see more. Thanks for tuning in. Also, be sure to check out our new platform, 343 Studio, if you want to go deeper on any of these topics.